Hello, it's Joey, and today I'm going to alter journal pages in an old book. My goal in filling this beautiful book is simply just to have fun. It's a place of creative freedom and a collaboration with Barbara at 49 Dragonflies and Tina Shabbydabbydoodah. But I started to procrastinate, getting stuck, looking at too many other altered books and just seeing so many ideas. So I've simplified my process and I've devised a 4-step approach to altering my book pages using supplies that we already have and making it all easy and fun. So hit the subscribe button for simple junk journal play and let's fill some pages today. The 4 steps in this approach are: number 1, painting some of the pages, and I'll give you some examples, and we'll do just a little bit of sploshing gesso and colour on a page. The second step is adding a little bit of paper, so adding some mats so that we've got some place to write, some place to collage, something to bounce off when we open up a page and want to fill it. Step 3 involves creating a cute little tag, and I've just come up with a way of using some scraps and bits and pieces to collage something really simple. And the final step in the process is indeed doing a collage. So I'm going to use some of my little bits of paper and put a collage on the page. So I'll start with just doing a little bit of happy painting, adding some of my different materials and supplies to the blank pages. And I would suggest that you do this in steps because the pages stick together, and I'm going to confess that I've had a go and I've had to stick some of the pages together because I was a little impatient and I didn't wait for them all to dry. So one tip is get yourself some water, get yourself a little bit of space, grab your various materials. You might start with pencils. You might have a watercolour palette. Here's one that I haven't used for some time and I don't know why, because I absolutely love it. I'm going to play with a few of these today. I'm also going to have a go at mixing, let's have a bit of alchemy, some of my slightly more pigmented gouache paints, and I think I'll add some water, some gesso and maybe a little bit of mica, and I'll show you how that works. We'll just have a play, and the whole purpose being fun means it really doesn't matter how it turns out. The point of putting paint and some colour on the page for me is to just get rid of some of that rather uncomfortable blank. Break the page, get something down there. So all I do is, let's pick one of these colourful mediums with a bit of water, put some gesso on the page and pick some sort of colour to mix with it. So I have my palette here. I'm just going to pick up some of these autumnal colours that I'd used in a previous video, I think. So these are gouache, however you choose to say it. Gentle colours of orange and muted greens, reflecting perhaps the seasons around us, and a little bit of red. I watched Tina adding some, I think it was just domestic paint to her pages, and I do like the change in texture that you get as you work through the book. I'm using a fairly large brush, it's a water brush, so there's water in the barrel, although to be frank, I'm still just dipping. And I'm adding just a little bit of colour to a page, and I'm not worrying too much about whether it goes to the sides, and I'm being quite naughty and I'm dipping my brush back into the gesso tub. I guess I should put a blob in here and work with that. And this is one way of getting just a touch of colour quite well controlled, because you're dipping into a palette, choosing where to put the colour and how much, and just maybe creating some kind of matting or backing that we can react against when we come to decorate a little bit later on. Another way that I've been filling my book, and I will have to be careful and separate those pages so they don't stick, is taking my mica that's in my little bottle, and I showed you how to mix these with simply water and mica powder in my last video, starting by actually spraying directly onto the page with that. And it doesn't matter if you don't have mica, just use whatever you have. If you have pencils, that's okay too. and I'm just going to spread that out. And what I have in this mica is the very subtle twinkle, a little bit of sparkle appearing on the page, and it's quite a quick way of getting some water onto the page as well. And some of the pages I like to leave just as mica. It really looks quite aged because of the mix of colours in here, which are rather a deep golden brown green, a mix of brown, gold, just sort of grungy colours. So a bit more. Yes, I can actually see the sparkle coming through. And what I might do is also use watercolour paints on these pages. So these are my Arteza paints that I used so much in some of my junk journals when I was doing those last year, junk journal spreads, and I've got lots of videos on my channel if you fancy getting a bit of inspiration from some of the journal spreads I did. And I can just pick up colour from those. These are a bit more pigmented, but still very easy to work with. And again, I like having just that hint of colour as opposed to just to the mica or just gesso, and that's just a personal preference. If you have any old watercolour paints, feel free to dig them out and get just a, maybe a light wash onto your page. Another palette that I haven't used for some time, and I felt it was a great opportunity to have a go, is an Artist Loft palette. And I was having a chat with Elizabeth Wallace, so Never Hopeless, on YouTube. I'll leave her channel linked in the description box down below. Elizabeth has been using a lot of these, she tells me, and I need to look up how she's been using them in her artwork, her composition books. But they also have a little bit of sparkle in them. These were about £6, I think, from my local Hobbycraft, and they have mica embedded in the little paint palettes. So I've been playing with these and just getting the feeling of them back. I think an altar book is a great place for giving us the opportunity to re-experiment with some of the supplies that we perhaps used some time ago but have forgotten. And I think that's possible. You can have I feel like I can have a little bit of a phase when I really enjoy one particular supply and then can forget about some of the others that I have. So this is my altered book, A Space for Play, a space for fun and learning, and I'm absolutely setting out to do this in a way which is not about making it extra pretty. I want to avoid that sense of getting stuck because I feel it has to be of a certain style and standard, particularly watching what others do. I maybe went too far watching so many other videos and starting to think it had to be a certain way. And that's why I've developed this 4-step approach to back off, make life simpler, and just be happier as we're crafting. Take your paints, take your pencils, and fill a few pages with whatever you want. Step 1 couldn't be easier, super relaxing. Let's just have a go. So now we've painted some pages in step 1, we can move to step 2, which is putting some little papers on each page. And I like to add just some small mats on a few of the pages in dimensions of 3 by 4 inches. And what that gives me is a place to react against. It's a start of a decorated page if I want to use it. I won't put them on every page, so if I want a free-for-all, free design collage, I can still pick a page and go for that. But I'm going to dig into my stash and pull out some papers, cut up some little mats in 3 by 4 and add them to some of these pages. The other thing I like to do that I think is a little bit helpful is write on the side what I've done in adding the little bit of colour. So this page, for example, is mica, gouache, and it's mixed with gesso. So I've just done a bit of handwriting on the side. And when I come to collage on this page, I might even leave that visible because there's something about black ink and handwriting that I really like. These are the sorts of little mats I want to create and add. And I'm not unhappy with either using bits of scrap paper, these have been actually written on the back. I'm happy with bright, colourful pages. I don't need this to be that beautiful antique set of shades. I don't want to feel so disciplined that I have to limit myself to those colours. I like them and they're pretty when they're done, but I feel like I want to use a bit of colour. I've got some scrapbook paper and some odds and ends, and I've just pulled out a few little papers. This one is a beautiful American Craft scrapbook page, and it's a piece I've got left, so I think the spots are super fun and not too bright. I like the greens. Again, that's going with a little bit of a theme in the book. I've got a page here, a piece that is, albeit some Christmas style decoration on it, some patterns. The muted shades I think really work, and that would be good for writing on. Imagine that with some beautiful gel pens or a fountain pen. And then I couldn't resist pulling out this piece because of the autumnal oranges, and the diagonals as well I think will be great. And then finally I pulled out this page to go in the altered book just because it has that gentle colours. It's mixed with a little bit of yellow and a sort of cranberry red. There's space for writing, so again you would be able to see distinct script if I write on that. And my journal, my altered book, is meant to be a place for putting some commentary in. So I thought I'd just cut a few pieces out of these and then we can stick them in the book. And while I add some rounded corners to that, I just want to add a suggestion for how you help your book to dry. It's probably a good idea to put it on its side and let the air get down through the pages. You could obviously leave it on its side to dry and put some things between each page to keep them separate, but if you do have the chance to put the book to the side, maybe while you sort out the little pieces of paper and gather some other little decorations, that's a nice way of getting the air to it and helping it dry off in a structured way, in a nice, clean and easy way. So I'm just going to put some rounded corners on these. So as part of step 2, I'm also going to delve into some of my little tubs and boxes of images and messages and little icons that I want to stick in the book. This is my little tub of goodies. I might use the autumnal snippet that I made in last week's video, so I'll have that on the side. That might go in the book as a belly band a bit later. And I want to pull out a few little images or labels or notes, just a few small ones to put on top of those mats. What I do is sit in an evening cutting things out. So let's have a few of those on the desk, ready to put on top of the mats when we put these pieces of paper in the book. I'm not desperately organised, as you can see, with any of these. These are cute little flowers. Those are Tina's Shabbydabbydoodah, and these are just the ubiquitous label that features in so many of my pages. I really like these. These are Tracy Fox. Again, I'll put links to everybody I mention in the description box down below. So I'll have my pile of paper mats, I'll have my pile of little images and labels, and I'm merely going to go through my book and get some of this stuck in. So step 2 could not be easier. I've been doing this already, so here's an example. This is a fairly white-based piece. I think white-based patterned scrapbook paper can be quite difficult to work with in our junk journals, particularly if we want something that's more of an aged feel. But in an altered book, I think it has a life of its own. So this is what I'm going to do. Be not too discerning in choosing the mat. Put it on, pick a picture, maybe add a little bit of an image, and hey ho, keep going. These are watercolour pencils. I'm just putting a border around because I think that gives it some sort of really specific defined space to occupy the page. You can see you don't need to be tidy, just scribbling it on. What I like to do is add a couple of colours, adding a bit more dimension. And I'm just going to add this single mat, the label and the butterfly, and leave it at that on this page. And I won't add a mat to every page. I'm just going to work through the book in step 2 and add some extra emphasis and decoration like this. Nice and scruffy actually, I think that actually adds, and I'm going to go over the edge of that mat. So now I feel so much better already because I've started using those supplies and just getting them on the page and not getting stuck and thinking too much what should something look like. And despite the fact that that's got a very wide background and we're in a vintage altered book, I'm okay with that. Let's keep going. Contrast on the left. And I think at this stage I'll add a couple, so I'm going to have a square one and something down here. I'm going to have the weight up there, that's better. White behind, dominant coloured one on the front on this occasion. Let's see what we can do. And I don't know why, but I want that way up. Go on there, and I really like that now because although that was probably when I did it a little bit too vibrant, a little bit too bright, because I've got something on the other side now, I feel that that balances it out. And I'm intentionally having this spotted piece this way up because I've got just a little bit of extra scruffification in the pattern here, a little bit of grunge, and that's a clean line, so I just feel that that should be at the top. And again, what I could do is just give it a little bit of border, scruffy, and wet it. This is the kind of thing I was doing in a doodle in my art journal not too long ago. So I like to have a go at something, and if I can remember it as a technique, just pick it up and have a go at it in a different context in our journaling. And there's so many different techniques, so many different things we can do. I'm sure that by the time we've had a go at a few, we've forgotten the first ones we've done. So just keep having a play, whatever comes to mind, fill your altered book, have some fun. When I put down my little bits of paper, I'm not just looking at the colour, I'm thinking about left, right, up, down. Just whatever feels right when you have a play. Don't always need to put a border around it. Those two go together. We'll have a little bit of the snippet that I made last week. This is one that I haven't added puzzle pieces to. I did a snippet with puzzle pieces and then I added them to pieces of card from a dog food box. You could use a cereal box, and the puzzle pieces would have made it, I think, a bit too thick to fit in this altered book. So this is a snippet that I finished before adding those puzzle pieces. Just up there. And in fact, I think that can go, I don't know why, but I think it can go on the left hand side. It's a bit better visually. So that can go in. So all we're doing is adding papers, step 2, adding papers and a few little decorations. And it feels good because I'm making progress and not getting stuck. Don't think about it too much. Add some things to your book. Yumminess. Paper yumminess. If I see a little bit of colour, I think I can use that to inspire which of these extra decorations I pull from my pile. See what we've got here. I cut out some the other night. I like that, but I don't want it to go on the same page as that belly band and the botanicals. I do like that with that very aged green, grungy green. So shall we have something down there? Lovely little picture. And when I look at that, I see quite a lot of space above and below. So I'm just going to work on that with maybe another picture or another little image. Effectively, we're collaging at this stage as well, but we're adding paper, step 2, paint, paper, make a little decoration, collage, 4 easy steps. And that's all we do in step 2. We use up some of our supplies, we get some little mats put in. Sometimes it might be 2 mats on a page, sometimes it might be just 1. I'm not necessarily doing it on every page, and sometimes it's left and not right. That works really well, doesn't it? Because we've got green on the page behind, it really goes well there. I really like that. I think I'll just have something extra over here. In fact, I don't know why, but I might have something facing the wrong way up over here. Surprise for the eye, that's partly what it's all about. Surprises for the eye. Let's have a different page. Ooh, I really like the strength of this black, so maybe we need something over here. In fact, I don't know why, but I just feel we shouldn't always have complete images. Step 2 in the approach, a little bit of random collage, making yourself build that momentum so that you're making progress and building your confidence as you go through and fill it. So now we have a book with many more pages covered, colour on the paper, and a sense of our own identity coming onto the pages, building up spaces where we want to play and add extra detail. It's a bit random, it's a little bit structured sometimes, it's a little bit different, but it is ours and it's very much unique and going to be what you want and what makes you feel good. So that's step 2. In step 3, I'm going to use lots of little bits of paper to make a collage tag, and I'm going to put that on a page and actually do a collage spread. In this part of the process, I'm making a really simple tag using a single image. In this case, it's a toadstool little image from Tracy Fox. You could use any image, you could cut something out of a book or a magazine, and all I'm going to do is make a collage behind that image and then add an extra piece of book page to reinforce it. And on these I'm adding an extra tag at the top, again from a vintage book page, and a little bit of sewing, and I'll take you through how I do that. They're incredibly easy and addictive, and you can use up all of those little scraps of paper that build up and we don't know what to do with. And let me just share my horrendous little package of pieces of paper and scrap that I've been pulling from to make these. These are all patterns, all sizes, and really teeny tiny scraps, and when I make any sort of project or cut a piece off, they go in here. And all I've been doing is pulling out some colours to tone with the image, and see, even a piece like that, adding them behind this main image. So I'll show you how I do it, and we ended up with something which, as a little embellishment, seems to work in our altered book. One of the reasons I like it is it's a little bit tatty and scrappy, and I think that goes with the age and feel of the book, but it's also quite flat, and that is a bit of a challenge in this book. I can't really go about adding envelopes and too many pockets because it will build up and become fat too quickly. It's also a little tag that allows us to put tiny little bits of text around it and let the eye see a range of those collage pieces behind. So let's begin with one little image, build up the collage scraps behind it, maybe sew on the top tag and then add it to our book. So start with a single image. I like something which is relatively rectangular, maybe this one. It's a collection of fungi. This is also a beautiful one, so little bugs. Which way up does that go? Maybe that way? Bugs. Maybe you have a little picture with some butterflies on, anything at all. And the first thing I'm going to do is take little pieces of scrap paper and collage behind. So my first step is to put the image on top of a piece which is intentionally not big enough to create a complete mat behind it. What I want to do is bound this image, roughly 2/3 of it, and leave part of it unbound. So I will stick this onto here and then just cut off underneath. And I want to do it in a way where the margin of the pattern paper behind is really quite narrow. And that's part of the feature of this little tag, that it's rather dainty and that the differing colours of scrap paper that we collage behind it don't overly dominate the pretty picture that we've chosen for the tag for the image. So I'm using a dryish glue and I'll stick that down, and I'm really only having a margin around this of about 2 millimetres or so. So really a little margin, and what these little pieces of scrap paper do is not only allow us to reduce what we have sitting around our craft room and on our craft desk, but it gives that first image a little bit of strength. And it's a different way of going about making a tag that isn't just cutting out a tag shaped piece of card and sticking an image on top. I just thought I'd do something different to use up my pieces of scrap. So all I'll do now is look for something that is cardstock that I can put the image on and start to build up the mats behind. Now I like this colour. It's a lovely pretty muted olive green. I'm just wondering if I've got something a little bit darker as well. What other scraps of paper do I have? So I have a little basket here with some tiny bits of scrappy paper in. I'll see what we've got in there. I've got some dark card. I don't know if that's wide enough. Not that way. So I'll make it work this way. I like that. It's got some real strength to it in the colour. I want this to come up the side of the tag to about 1/3 of the level, so that I've got plenty of space up here to have lovely bits of coloured scrap paper peeping out behind. So I will just trim this down so that it's again the same amount of margin width beyond what I already have, and it will be about 1/3 of the height of the image as a whole. Bit of my Pritt glue, and as neat as you can be, try and get a right angle at the corner, and I'll just trim off this excess here with my scissors to create a margin that is the same width, as close as can be, as this fairly narrow one over here. And now we just go to town with any of those bits of scraps and build up behind. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is a strip of painted paper that I've been using when I made my little snippets, and I really like the colours, so I'm going to have a little bit of that behind. So I'll have a little bit of glue where those card and papers join, because that's where I'm going to add the next strip. And I'll line it up so that the amount of excess peeping out at the left is the same as the brown cardstock that I had underneath. And then by eye, I am just going to trim it off at the side. So I'm building up here and here, building up around the side with some little pieces of paper. Bit of olivey colour there, shall we try that? So I'm going to stick that on so that I see the same amount sticking out to the left, and I'll just trim it off to the right. But you'd be surprised how you can use things of varying colours, and because we're only using a tiny amount of colour as a border that we build up, it's possible to use colours and bits of paper that you maybe wouldn't have used if it was in a bigger picture. So I'm just going to trim that down again, keeping it nice and narrow. I'm working up, and it's getting stronger as we go. Right, let's have a bit of text peeping out the side. So I want to add a little bit of book page just behind the back, and I want to see some of the text peeping through. So I would stick it on so that I still see some of the letters peeping out the side. So why don't we just rip that down and use a little piece. So let's say we had this in our stash and I want to build up. So I'll put a bit of glue on the back and I'm going to add that on there, behind, and then trim off continuously up the side, keeping that margin the same size, and also here. And what I've done is retain a bit of the text on the left. I haven't gone all the way to the edge of this book page and just having blank. I've made sure that when I placed the tag on top, some of this was peeping out to the left, and I really like having that text mixing behind this beautiful vintage image. So maybe one more piece at the top, and I might go back to my green. So let's add, oops, a little bit more glue at the top here. Press that down. Snip it off. And now we've got the basics of the front of a tag. What I like to do is reinforce the back either with card or some beautiful book pages. So now I can return to the page that I had and just stick that on. So I've added that, and I've not put the glue all the way to the top, so you can see that this top flap here is still free, and that will allow me to fold some of the book page over and just make a really neat top. So I'll trim it at the side, take that down, and now I've got an image that has gone to being quite substantial, really nice feeling. I'm going to fold over the top just beyond where that green is. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the rim and then tuck it under here, under this little green piece. And that gives me a tag, maybe with a space. Let's give it a little bit of something at the top. Tucking that again underneath the green, and now it's time to either glue down that top flap, which I can do, or if you wanted to, and I think this really works, is I've just done a bit of a zigzag stitch with my sewing machine across the top of them, and it just adds just that little bit of grungy extraness, something detailed for the eye to see. And I like using my sewing machine on paper, so what a great excuse to play. So it's time to pick a page in our book and just bring it all together. This was a collage spread that I did in the first session of choosing this altered book and just getting the thing going. I've done a spread for October, just creating a calendar, and I think I'll do that for November. And I really enjoyed writing in it and just making observations about the past and using my gel pens to put down some directions and thoughts for the future. So why don't we put some of what we've created into this book. Let's have a go on the page where we added the snippet. I think I'm just going to add some layers. I've got some little images and tags cut out on copy paper, so maybe that could go on there. I really like the black on this, so I'm making sure that I keep my little notes about what had gone on the page. I think the tag that I've made, do I pop that on there? No, it's covering it up. I'm going to pop that under my snippet, and I think the fungi collection goes really well with the little bits on here. And I just want a bit of a collage going on around here. What should we have? And these are pieces of paper that I think I can write on, so I might do a few notes in a minute. I really like that, and again it's from a page with a discussion about mushrooms. I'm not taking too long about it, and it definitely won't be perfect, a long way from it, but it just gives me something that I really like. fact, doesn't that say it all? Follow your heart. Don't stop, don't think too much. Give yourself the freedom to create. And this is my 4-step process for filling an altered book. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell and give me a thumbs up because that really helps. And check out my video where I chose this book and started to alter it and then covered the front, because I think you'd really enjoy coming on this journey with me. I hope to see you soon.